we can let them speak first, and then at the end, we'll ask the questions.
Hi everyone, my name is Brett Withers. With the Metro Planning Department, I currently work with council members and appreciate Councilmember Kimbrough making time for us this evening. A lot of Council Lady Kimbrough's community meetings are on the same night as the Planning Commission, and it makes it really hard for our staff to come out because we have to be there. So I really appreciate Councilmember Kimbrough for making time for us this evening, and to all of you for coming out. Councilor Lady Kimbrough had a couple of questions. In particular, I think a lot of folks had some interest in rural policy areas, which you do have a lot of rural policy areas. And I would overall say that Metro, our community plans team is frequent. You know, if someone wants to change a policy, it goes through a process where we'll have staff that will come out to a meeting and hear your feedback about changing that policy. There are a couple of things here and there that are coming up. I think Councilmember Kimbrough, at your next community meeting, there's one little area along Wedge Creek Pike where someone is wanting to do a policy amendment, but that always has a public process where we send out notice and our staff come and say, this we need to go ahead and this is what the feedback was. So other than that, I'm not aware of any changes to policy in your area. However,
let me just say this since you mentioned that, because people will be like, well, I haven't heard that. They have not confirmed a date yet. I sent the email, and nobody's gotten back. And once that date is confirmed, then I'll send it out to constituents. I have to address everything.
They're working with Council Lady Kimbrough to get on their schedule for that. So that overall for rural policy areas, generally speaking, not a lot has changed. We, as a city, have been looking at a lot of ways of better having new housing fit in better, including for just regular building permits. We have changed the how high, the dimensions of what you can build to fit in a little bit better with houses. So that's for all building permits. We've also created some new zoning districts that are of a multifamily type. We have multifamily zoning today, but we've created some new multifamily zoning districts that also have a little bit better design guidance to them. So, but none of those new zoning districts are applicable to rural policy areas. So having said, okay, I'll try that. So we have done some zoning things overall. Those really don't apply to rural policy areas, so nothing has changed there. However, I wanted to take this opportunity to introduce my colleague, Harriet, who is part of our planning department. Most people really think of or know the planning department because there's a rezoning, and I work very heavily on that side. But we also have lots of other planning staff who help us do conservation. Historic preservation is now part of our planning department. Conservation of natural resources or community design. And I wanted to give Harriet an opportunity to let you know about some of the things that we're working on in terms of ecological and environmental preservation. So I'll turn it over to Harriet.
Thanks, Brett, and thank you, Councilor Kimbrough, for inviting me to come tonight. My name is Harriet Brooks. I'm a landscape architect and an urban designer, and I sit within the design studio of the planning department. Most of the work that the design studio does is within the downtown area. We're doing lots of the work on the East Bank and things like that. But I'm really excited. This spring, we've launched a new countywide environmental planning study, and it's called the Ecological Conservation Strategy, but that's really just kind of a fancy term for looking at the natural resources that we have in Davidson County, understanding the effects of the really rapid growth that we've had over the past few years, and trying to better understand and develop better strategies for how we can conserve and preserve our natural features, and also our natural systems that are really important to the resiliency of the county and sustainability from an environmental perspective. So we have hired a consultant team, and there's a consultant group out of Baltimore called Biohabitats that is leading the effort, but they have Pillars Development and Cumberland River Compact and Wilmot Strategies, who are all local firms that are working with them. The study is going to take about 18 months. We really kicked it off in April, so we're just kind of at the beginning phase of it. But the first part of it is the planners and designers are really looking at understanding better the effects of the growth and the growth patterns that we've had in the past 5 years. Our urban tree canopy assessment, as you might be aware, came out last year, but the data that was used for it was from 2021. And so we've had a lot of change even since 2021. And then of course, I'm sure many of you were affected by Winter Storm Fern too, and the amount of tree loss that we've seen with that. And so there's a desire to really understand in a more objective fashion the effects of the growth. We hear from a lot of people every day in our planning work that people are excited about the growth and the opportunity that Nashville is seeing, but people are also concerned about a loss of authenticity and a loss of identity and sense of place. And some people feel that they don't recognize the neighborhoods that they've grown up in. And so that's something that we take very seriously. Our department sees it as intrinsically tied to the land, the landscape, and the natural features, and so that's why we're taking a look at that as part of this project. We will have an extensive community engagement aspect to this, especially in your part of the county. So although the study is looking at the entire county and all of the systems within the county, we're going to be doing a deep dive focus on the Highland Rim Forest. And so that part of the study will be kicking off probably early fall. And we will be really diving into understanding better the Highland Rim Forest as a resource for our county and looking for ways that we can really increase conservation and preservation of that important natural resource, at the same time balancing people's desire for growth and not wanting their properties to necessarily be affected by that. In addition to the Highland Rim Forest, we'll also be looking at the urban Cumberland River. That'll be another aspect of it, and trying to think about how we can reorient our river towards downtown. The recommendations of the study should be coming out next fall, so fall of 2027. And that's really about it. The recommendations will be incorporated into policy updates, planning updates. We will also be looking at new strategies of how we can improve programs like conservation easements. We're working with the Land Trust for Tennessee, 10 Green, and some other organizations, trying to understand how we can make those processes more appealing. We'll also be looking at things like transfer of development rights, and maybe how we can start to combine some tools for historic preservation and environmental conservation together. The results are meant to be a sort of toolbox of different types of recommendations, different approaches that we can take. And I'll be looking forward to seeing as many of you as possible at an upcoming meeting. And then also we will be posting all of the recommendations as we move through it, and we will be asking for everyone's feedback to better understand, if these are meeting the goals and objectives that the community has for the county. Yes, and the website is nashville.gov/ECS plan. And again, my name is Harriet Brooks. I'm happy for anyone to contact me, come talk to me. My email address is harriet.brooks@nashville.gov. I'll also hang out for a little while if anyone has any questions. So thank you. Yes. Sure.
The Highland Rim Forest, I know it goes all across the northwest end of the county. But for some reason, when it gets to Jordan, it just jumps Jordan and goes on into Robertson County. Can you find out, I have asked this question before and I've never gotten an answer. Can you find out why it jumps Jordan and ignores it and it moves on into Robertson County?
I can look into that. Sure.
So when you start your study, and if we're gonna be part of the focus of the study, what happens when we have developments that try to put an unprecedented amount of development in an area that would be a part of your study? How is planning managing that when it does not fit in with what your study may actually, because it's kind of like if it happens, your study won't mean anything. So how are you all navigating that?
Right, and you make a great point. Unfortunately, we have no, power to enforce anything until the recommendations are made and the regulations are set. Some of the recommendations we might be making are changes to the zoning code that will have to be approved by Metro Council. But we wouldn't be able to hold anyone to that until it is approved by council.
So we're kind of the forefront of your study, so we should see this area on your paperwork, on your study pretty quick.
Mike?
It may depend. So our community plan is a planning for growth as well as conservation. And our community plan has areas that the community largely agreed were intended for growth and development. And so it might depend on the specific location that you're talking about. Because some areas, let's say, kind of by here, were envisioned for a lot of growth and development because Clarksville High was a major road, a major corridor. But then as you get a little bit further out, the policy calls for more conservation. So it might depend on the location specifically. But from between here and kind of downtown is an area that was envisioned for very intense growth.
If you have a question, please wait on the microphone so everybody can hear the question. Are there any more questions? Okay, now, I need you all to come back on the phone. And I'm gonna take this to them. You keep your mic.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. You have to talk louder.
I just want to know how you approach Nashville Next and the recommendations that were made with the input of hundreds of hours of papers here a few years ago.
Sure.
Will you repeat her question first?
Sure. Just the question is, how does the planning department evaluate Nashville Next, which had a lot of community input and a lot of different recommendations? The Planning Commission, when they make a zoning decision or a policy amendment decision, are required to base that on Nashville Next. And I would say that it informs lots of decisions that we made. As I was mentioning earlier, there are some parts of the county that were identified through that community engagement as being high growth areas. And there is a lot of growth happening in those areas, and that meets policy for that area. But there might be other areas where, more maintenance was desired. You can still tear down a house and build another house, but maybe not, multiples, it just depends. So we look at, I think a lot of people are pretty used to rezoning applications and the way that those are evaluated. Harriet and her team are doing a lot of really, really good work about so many of the other recommendations. A lot of people, like I said, really think of planning in terms of rezoning or a subdivision, and that's a lot of our bread and butter work. But Harriet and her team and some of our other teams really are working very strongly to try to implement some of those, especially environmental preservation or placemaking, or how do you build a community and how do you design a community. And Harriet and her team are doing a lot of that work. And this ECS, Ecological Conservation Strategy, is one of those things. We're trying to get to because there were so many recommendations and many of them we haven't acted upon, we're trying to do better with that. Anything to add?
Just briefly, Nashville Next, so the recommendations that will come out of the study will not be in conflict with Nashville Next. Nashville Next is just a little vague when it comes to how it approaches environmental systems. And so like it just has overall conservation policy, and that could be floodplain, it could be a steep slope. And so with this, we are trying to be more nuanced in understanding what are appropriate responses depending on the type of landscape, the type of natural features that might be in a particular area.
Loud, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay, thank you. So, first, thank you for coming, and it's exciting to hear about what's going on, especially we're in your neck of the woods, and I'll be talking to you. But let's talk specifics if we might. Because there is a site down Ashland City Highway where Riley Parkway intersects. We've had discussions about this in meetings here. And in the 1990s, a cabinet maker came and said he wanted, with his son, to be able to build a business there. And so the planning staff and commission listened to that and thought, okay, that makes sense. We'll give it to industrial zoning. Cabinet maker, cabinet shop. Now, we have someone who's bought this land and wants to put in a corporate headquarters. A long ways from a cabinet maker and cabinet shop. So we're wondering, how does something like this happen? Especially in light of Nashville Next, because this is right in Nashville Next green space. So I'm just really curious about this.
I'm familiar with that property. I was serving as the council representative on the planning commission when we had one application for that site, which the commission recommended disapproval of, and the rezoning did not move forward at that time. One of the things about Nashville Next from a policy perspective is that policy is a future vision. So it's a vision of what should the future be like. But if you have zoning that was given to you by Metro Council at some point in the past, that zoning doesn't always align with what that future policy is, but you still have a legal right to build or use that property according to that zoning that's in place. And so that's why sometimes there's what we call legacy zoning, but it's from back in the day, before the community plan was updated, before there even was a rural policy. Sometimes you have the zoning properties that have that zoning, and they are entitled to build or use those properties according to that zoning that they were given by the legislative body. If we were to, the only time the planning commission typically would weigh in on it is if they were going to, seeking to rezone the property. We would review that against policy. In some cases, as well, if there is a subdivision, then sometimes we can review the subdivision to make sure that it meets policy. We have in the, and I know this is industrial, so that wouldn't apply, but sometimes sometimes you have a rural policy, but it has suburban zoning. There's a lot of that, and that's led to a lot of conflict in some of your areas. Again, people have a right to develop under that. However, when it comes to subdividing property, our subdivision regulations in a rural policy are much better today than they were in the past, because we've been trying to keep making them better. And I think that's one of the things that Harriet and her team will look at and say, what else do we need to do? But our subdivision regulations in rural policy are, even if it's got a suburban-based zoning, are much better today than they were in the past. But for the property that you mentioned, if they have industrial zoning, they are entitled by law to use that for whatever is approved in that zoning district. And it's frustrating, I can imagine. But for that one in particular, now, one of the things about it as well is that, and Mr. Honeysucker might be the best one to answer some of these questions. Sometimes you'll have a property that may or may not have sewer access. And that's not typically something that the planning department would review, but if a property has infrastructure to support that use, they would have to have infrastructure to support that use before they can get a building permit. And if they don't have that infrastructure, then that may be an issue. But Mr. Honeysucker's best qualified to answer things about the plumbing, because I'm not a plumber, so.
That's a very relevant question, and looking forward to hearing the answer about that, because my understanding is that they have asked for a sewer availability study. They've applied for 745 feet of plumbing to go across Briley, which has been, Briley has historically, since I moved here in 2009, it always was sort of relayed to me like the city sort of ends at Briley. Briley has always been sort of the development boundary. And that seems to be shifting somewhat. And with the potential of sewer coming across Briley, that really portends a lot of possible issues down the line. I want to talk about what's in the T2 Community Character Manual. It says, in the absence of acceptable development proposals, sites that contain existing uses and or zoning that are inconsistent with the policy and are no longer viable should be rezoned to more compatible with the applicable policy. That seems to me to say that when you have these discrepancies in zoning, that the policy says that we should rezone to conform to the policy.
The community character manual we would hope that things would move in a direction of being more compliant with policy in the future. However, the rezoning would still have to be initiated by a property owner, and a property owner may not be interested in initiating that to lose their entitlements, or it could be initiated by a council member. However, it would be wise or well to have the property owner on board. I think it's best to have the property owner on board. It's not required. But when there is a public hearing, the property owner definitely has an opportunity to present their case to the planning commission and the council as a whole. And I think, that's where some dispute happens. But having a policy in place does not automatically negate the zoning.
Here's kind of what's been happening when there have been a number of very large projects that have come forward. One was the Zeal Church that wanted to go behind there, and they went through the BZA. And it almost went through the BZA and was allowed to be done, which is totally inconsistent with policy and just wouldn't have been approved if it would have been a commercial building. But they, were pushing the RULA angle to get the special exception. How? And so situations like Zeal and now Best Brand, you have these two major things that one almost happened, one appears to be happening, that are inconsistent with the policy. And so it sure begs the question, what's the point of policy if you can still allow these things to happen? And where are the checkpoints along the way that we can, as citizens, ensure that we have an agreed upon policy, that we're following the policy?
I'll tackle the church use one first. So in our zoning code, including all residential zoning as well as all the other, churches are kind of allowed everywhere in our zoning code, more or less. And so there may be conditions that are put on that. But in addition to metro zone laws, as you mentioned, there are sometimes state and federal protections for religious uses. And so a rural policy would not say you can't have a church. So to that extent, in terms of would it be in violation of policy to have a church or even a large church? Probably not. But that in some zoning districts, you have to have we call it a special exception, but special exception has, in our zoning code, actually has a list of standards that you have to meet. And they go to the Board of Zoning Appeals. The Board of Zoning Appeals, for special exceptions, the planning department will send a recommendation, but the Board of Zoning Appeals is under no obligation to follow our recommendation. They sometimes just take it as information. So keep that in mind. But that's for the religious use. For the commercial use, again, like if someone is wanting to do a commercial use in legacy zoning from the past, the codes department basically has to issue them a permit if they find that it meets their zoning, regardless of the policy. It's just that if a rezoning were to be sought, the planning department would review it against the policy.
One more question about the RO. My understanding is that legislation is to prevent discrimination. That is very different than giving a blank check to just allow anything to happen. So what's the Occam's razor for how do we distinguish between, like, just giving a blank check, you call yourself a church, you can build anything because you're a church and we're afraid of a lawsuit, versus like the very real, like, I don't know, it just seems like a...
Yeah, there's that. There's also something called Right to Farm Act, which allows lots of uses to be, people come with very clever ways of saying this is related to my farm, but those interpretations are made by the zoning administrator, in this case, Joey Hargis, would make an interpretation of that. So it's like I said, for planning department, we would review a rezoning or a subdivision, but that's kind of where our authority is. And even then, we do make a decision about subdivisions. For rezonings, it's just a recommendation to council, and they can take that information as much as they want. Sorry about that. Yes, sir.
Yeah, my question from Ms. Harriet there, under this environmental study, will they be conservation property today removed, and if so, why?
No, is the short answer.
Busily taking notes on all my comments I'm gonna make. Thank you all, thank you for being here. I'm really excited about the ECS. And not to jump back to the tax question since Vivian has left, but watching the differentiation between the services district narrow leads to maybe some thoughts on I always get them reversed. I somehow say urban when I mean general, but somehow that the general services district is paying more but we're not seeing any changes in the services that district receives. I'm a believer in public services and good schools, all that kind of stuff. So I'm not a tax cheat or cheap. It just seems like when you start with those two districts being about 20% apart, and they end up being less than 2% apart, but there's not any changes in the services delivered or an explanation of what's going on. You do feel like maybe the general services is subsidizing the urban services, which is understandable given the budget considerations, but I think maybe that should be addressed. And that's a council mayoral question. What I'm getting to on the planning question of that is that I do feel like that there are planning decisions that hinge upon tax district. So like, let's say, day dues or something like that that's contingent upon whether a property is in one of those districts. If those districts are dissolving, if that's the writing on the wall that there's going to be a tax rate for the county, everybody gets street lights and trash service, but everybody pays the same rate. Where do those distinctions go? And I think that ties into the ECS, that ties into previous conversations about the types of boundaries and the different areas that we have in the area. What is rural? What is urban? What is a district as diverse as D1 would like to see, where we all stay together on the same raft? I have to look at my notes because I ran out of steam. And that type of boundary is not I feel like it immediately gets perceived and it gets addressed in the heart of kind of NIMBYism, where there's the sense that it's not so much about it's about the type. It's about appropriateness and the smart growth that happens in these areas, and whether you're looking at patterns that match the rural character. And in policy, to go back to policy, we look at the rural policies. I think in all of Nashville Next, the word permanent exists maybe 11 times. I think 9 of them are in the rural policies. Like there's not a lot of indication of, there's a ton of indication that the folks that are in those areas, we're saying this is a resource, our community resource to provide for our neighbors and for Nashville.
when you come to things like the Highland Rim Forest, whether it's stormwater reduction, whether it's heat island mitigation, those kind of considerations then also tie into if someone's got a conservation easement on their parcel, they're providing a benefit to themselves and their neighbors, but they're facing a tax rate, no consideration that of the tax rate, that they're voluntarily not developing that land, that there are benefits to everybody that crosses the parcel lines. Again, just really excited, grateful for you all to be here. Back to the rezonings where we have these discrepancies of policy and zoning. Some of these zonings are, not long after the consolidation of city counties. So some of these zonings go back to like 74. We've had 40 years of community plan work where they have maybe diverged. Maybe there's a mindset that taking a check from a spec tract type builder was the only way out of some of these farms for folks that were cash poor. I think that's evolved. That's evolved with the sense of where people are moving in Nashville, what they would like to see. So taking that into consideration, and that maybe a recommendation coming from the ECS is addressing zoning, even if it's bulk zonings, if it's opt-out zoning, so that you're not running into. I'm not forcing anybody to lose entitlements, but you see large rezonings happening, whether it was District 3 or whether it was Pennington Bend. So maybe there's something that could come out as a recommendation of that. I know I've talked with Councilman Kimber about that possibility. Coordination of Metro Water, like there's decisions on sewer extensions. If there's a right hand not knowing what the left hand is doing, but there's recommendations coming out of the ECS or out of Nashville Next, it seems to me that places like BZA and Metro Water should be plugged into those as far as what's the overall plan for this area, and instead of a case-by-case incremental loss through that kind of creep. Thanks.
Really, really appreciate you guys coming and sharing this. I just can't contain my excitement about the ECS, so thank you all.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Like I said, for sewer extensions, I will definitely need to rely upon the wisdom and experience of Mr. Honeysucker about that. But again, the planning department typically does not review a sewer unless like someone is doing what's called a specific plan zoning that also does that, and then we would review it with the other agencies. But for a lot of things that are happening in the existing zoning, we would not review. It would not be something that we would review, unfortunately.
Thank you. Any other questions for planning before Mr. Honeysucker comes and speaks on water? Oh, I'm sorry.
You may have spoke about this, but I'm not sure if you did. There is a survey right now online. Did you speak to that? That is, first there was a June 6th deadline for the public to put in their input, and then now I think it's June 12th. So can you let everyone know about the survey?
I didn't plant her, I promise.
Right, did you do that?
No, I said I didn't plant you, but thank you for the reminder.
Oh, and then my next question would be is, will there be other opportunities? It says deadline, and then did we all lose the opportunity? Thank you.
Absolutely not. Yes, thank you so much for that reminder. So, yes, we have an online survey right now. She is correct. It goes until June. It'll be open until June 12th. This first survey is very, it's very broad. It's asking general questions like, where do you go in Nashville to be in nature? What do you think is important to conserve or preserve within the county? What are concerns that you have around either growth and development or around changes that you have been seeing? The survey takes less than 5 minutes to complete. It's I think it's only 6 questions. It's very brief. And then you can also choose to include your email address so that we can keep you updated as we move forward through the process. Again, the website is nashville.gov/ECS-plan. And yes, please fill out the survey. Please share it with your friends. We're trying to get as many people as possible to fill it out, just so we sort of understand as part of this initial research phase of the project, just how people are feeling, the places that are important to you, what's critical, and where should we be focusing in terms of priorities as we move forward on this project. There will be many more points of engagement. We will have community meetings. We are attending pop-up events at various parks. Some of that there'll probably be a little bit of a lull over the summer as our team dives deep into their analysis. And then as we start ramping up the Highland Rim Forest work in the fall, we'll be more active again in terms of attending events. And we're happy to come talk to anyone at any time. Feel free to reach out. We'd love to hear from you and love to have your feedback and understand what you're looking to see.
Thank you. And I think it's your May 29th email for me. I have a link to the survey in that email. Dr. Conrad, you saying something?
I was just gonna say the link is in.
Oh, it's in not the one I sent out today, but the previous, the link is in there. And I have that deadline of June 12th.
Yes.
On it.
correct.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, all right. Thank you so much for coming. Mr. Honeysucker, last but not least.
Good evening, everybody. I promise you, I think the meeting's supposed to be at 7 o'clock, and 20 minutes over, so I'm gonna be 60 seconds, and then I'm gonna get out of here with a smile. My name is John Honeysucker. So I want to briefly hit the bullet points. Pumping station in Jolton was upgraded, I think, maybe a year and a half ago. But the line, can you hear me? Is that better? About a year and a half ago. Right now, they're working on the new force main that's going up towards Jolton. I think it goes down White Street to, what is it called, Devil's Elbow or something like that. So that is currently in construction right now. I don't know what percentage it is being completed, but it is actually being worked on right now. Was it I want to open up right now, any specifics that you have for me, because you know your council lady, she called me 15 minutes before the meeting started and said the meeting was. I'm sorry, 20 minutes.
Thank you.
20 minutes. But I'm gonna be here. If she called me 10 minutes, I'm gonna still be here, so I'm okay here.
Thank you. Mr. Honeysucker, do you know the Earthman Fork rehabilitation, is that the same thing along the Earthman Fork rehabilitation that's happening along, it's a fork of Whites Creek Pike that runs up Whites Creek along Whites Creek Pike towards Jolton. I feel like there was notice that, I don't know if that was septic rehabilitation or creek rehabilitation, but there were crews working through there. I didn't know if that was maybe the pump that you're talking about, or is there something different going on there, do you know?
That's a different project that's going on right there. I can find out the exact name for you, and you just give me a call, George, and I'll find out. I
Thank you.
apologize for not having that.
No problem. I guess there was a pump house going in the 46 or 4700 block of White Street Pike. Is that maybe the Jolton Station feed?
No, that one was, I don't know if you remember 3 years ago, it blew out. That blown out severely in a severe way and flooded some properties next to it. And it's just upgrading the infrastructure right there. That pump station needed some upgrades, and they had to go in and do some work on it.
Thank you. I believe that the upgraded pump station was originally planned to go there next to what's known as the Blue Hills Farm, which is historic, and the subsequent plans ended up buying a home across the street and putting them on that site, so thank you for that change.
Yes, sir. And while the next person is asking, if there's ever any questions, you all know I'm very accessible, and I think I'm one of the most accessible people in the city. You call me on my cell phone, text me, or email me at john.honeysucker@nashville.gov, and I will get your response within 24 to 48 hours. Okay?
Could you repeat that email again?
It's JOHN.HONEYSUCKER@nashville.gov.
And do you handle like the stormwater drains, the culverts and stuff like that?
I can tie into that. I'm associated with it, yes, ma'am.
Okay, then I will reach out, because I've been having
Please
some
do.
issues on my street. And
Yes,
you're
ma'am.
one of the supervisors, and I would like to discuss the.
And I was at, says, when you send me an email, please copy the councilman on it. Please copy the councilman on that. Accountability is big for me. And when the teams, different divisions within Metro Water, if they don't respond in a timely manner, I take that very seriously. So please keep the councilman on that, so we keep communication and accountability very well.
Can you update on the sewer crossing Briley?
I cannot, because I don't know anything about it.
You don't know about it?
But I will be more than happy to find out.
Thank you.
Let me say this. Thank you, and I appreciate you coming. I did not initially ask Metro Water to come out. I was trying to deal with the planning department, and Mr. Brett Withers told me, he said, you probably need somebody from water as well, because they'll want to know about the sewer lines or whatever. So it wasn't 20 minutes, but it was, and I appreciate you coming, it was today, but I'm fine with having another meeting where where we invite Metro Water out to come address you guys. And another reason this was an off Thursday, I realize you all do what you do on the fourth Thursday. When I asked him, whatever day you have available in June, I will make it work. So we agreed on this day, and that's why we're here. That's why it's not the fourth Thursday in June. So I wanted to be able to, whenever they were available, I knew we could probably make ourselves available. Yes, sir.
Please email me that information, and copy the council,
Yes, sir.
and I'll get you an answer.
Appreciate you, thank you. So again, thank you for coming. We had conversations with Scott Potter, and some of you are going to address this specifically because you're involved in these conversations, bury that down. 2 or 3 of them about process. I'm glad we've got planning and Metro Water here. We suggested in these meetings that we alter the process, that rather than a developer coming just to Metro Water and saying, hey, give us a letter and let us run with it. That before you do that, you need to go through planning first and see if it's compatible with the policies. And then, if planning says yes, it's compatible with the policy, you get the letter that says you can run from it. To my knowledge, we never, Sumter, to my knowledge, we had these discussions 3 years ago, and we're still sort of hanging, right?
When you say, I want to clearly define what you're saying.
Yes.
You said you go from, you'll ask planning for a letter. What letter are you referring to?
So when a developer comes in and says, we want to do a project.
So you're saying a capacity letter?
Correct.
Okay. Now, that has nothing to do with planning or any other department. That's just a due diligence that a person would have to do to request capacity through the rightful department, which would be Metro Water. They don't have to go to planning and codes or anyone else. That's something that we do, and we have engineers that do modeling for those areas to make a determination if there's capacity available, whether it be water or sewer.
I think you need to answer.
I think the problem became, that we ran into, is that in different projects, a developer would come in and take the capacity letter and wave it around as if it was some kind of permission that their whole project was good. When in fact, my understanding is the only thing the capacity letter did was say, if you were to build a 60-unit apartment building here, there would be available water and sewer, right? So, but to avoid the confusion of that, our suggestion to Mr. Potter was, since that is part of one of the things that planning staff would consider when looking at a project, to simply send the letter to planning, not through the developer. And I don't know whether or not that change ever happened.
So that change has not happened. Again, if someone comes in and requests capacity, they need to pay for a certain percentage of that capacity, then it's theirs. It's theirs. Now, how they take that letter and wave it around, that's out of our control. that does not guarantee that the project is approved. That's only focused on the capacity, period, okay? That has nothing to do with, hey, has this, that does not say, well, that letter, you cannot walk into planning and say, hey, I got capacity, you better approve this. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work. This is just part of the due diligence process of getting something approved. It's just step by step.
I understand that, but the way it is often used is in a community meeting like this, the way we have to go, we've gone to Metro, da, 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 da. And it seems to us that it's simpler just to have you all tell planning, yes, if these people got this project, or we would have capacity if it was approved.
And I totally understand what you're saying.
Okay.
So I'm gonna just say this to the whole room. A capacity letter is only for getting water or sewer, whichever one they request. That does not approve the project at all. It has no validation to that. It's just for the water and sewer capacity. It does not, Frank Willis will tell you this, it does not say a project is approved through plan. But I understand what you're saying, because I've seen it. I've seen it.
Okay, I understand what they're saying is that water's not gonna do you any good if you can't build what you're wanting to build. So to get the water capacity, but you're not allowed to build the house, is kind of like, why pay the money for the water capacity if you're not allowed to build the house? So is there a way, whether it has to go through council, that the process can be switched to say, you have to get approved for the zoning or whatever to build the house, then you, it's like putting the cart, you know, before the horse. So, you know, so to say one process to take place first before you can even get to the second. I think that's what they're trying to say, is that do one first, and you have to go through step one first, then you can get the second step. And is there a way, maybe through council, that it can happen, or maybe the person who's over the department can make it happen?
Rules like that will probably have to be changed through council. I'll give you another example. If I'm going to buy Gary's property, before I buy Gary's property, one of the things, if I know I want to build on it, I'm going to check to see if it has capacity. Now, I'm buying it with the intent of wanting to build, but if I don't check in advance to see if it will be able to have sewer or water capacity, then I don't need to buy it. So that's part of doing due diligence. That's what I was saying. But to your point, that would be a council matter.
Yeah, because I think the developers are trying to do this kind of like a switch and bait type thing to make you believe something that's not really there.
Absolutely. I mean, that's it in a nutshell. We know how the game's played. We know how the game's played. Yes.
Separate from the water capacity letters, grading permits have been a problem where a developer will get a grading permit to build a horse farm at 600 feet elevation and spend 5 years filling it in, and then decide he's not gonna build a horse farm anymore. But he got the permit, and next thing you know, got a landfill. Step, repeat, step, repeat, step, repeat. Now we've got all these landfills that are happening. Is there any stormwater? This may be one of those instances where instead of stormwater giving him a permit, send him planning and make sure that it applies with the policy.
Let me tell you, that one right there is a real, the ones that live in Scottsboro, down there. Well, no, we just had a meeting with Berkeley, I forgot, it was 2 months ago or something, down at the council chamber. That's one of the things that we're really working on right now. And sadly, you guys can help me on this. I think it was part of that policy was all you have to have is 2 chickens and a duck or something like that. You know what I'm talking about? No, I'm serious. I'm serious. They will tell you, I'm very serious. Just have 2 chickens on there, and then you fall under that agricultural exemption, and guess what? You can do all of those things on there, and there's nothing we can do about it. And these guys will tell you this. I'm not joking. It sounds funny, but people will do that, and then that's when you see all the trucks coming in, up and down the road, dumping for $50 a load, $100 a load, and you got about 150 trucks running down a day. So, to your point, that's an ongoing battle that these 2 gentlemen have been battling with, and I think we're making some progress, I guess, with the communication side. I guess you all can agree with me on that, but it's an ongoing battle. And for me to sit up and say I have a final answer for you, I'm not even going to guess or speculate. it's an ongoing process.
Will you just list your work phone number too? I know you gave your email, but.
My cell number is 615-948-0115.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And we have one last question, and I'm going to eat.
Yeah, we do have some.
But I'm going to get a piece on my way.
Any more questions? Thank you so much for coming out. Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. Yep, that's the last question.
Mine's more answers than questions.
Here you go.
Some people have questions about water flow, sewer, things like that. Yes, it's a little different when someone asks for a water flow or sewer acceptance prior to planning. But planning cost, and sorry, my name is Scott, it's a consulting firm. I deal with large tracts of land. Planning costs, for me to get an engineer, whatever the case may be, some of my guys in Illinois, it costs us $10,000 to get to that planning board. But water is free. I can see what can be allowed, it's called PSI. So what can be, shipped in and out without disturbing the city, as well as sewer. So we're gonna take care of the free part first, before I give you $10,000, then I go back and the free part says, no, I'm not getting a refund for what I just, acquired for. Now, I heard somebody ask about a trust or something like that. I had an answer in my head, but property value itself, when you have stimulations of your property, believe it or not, yes, it's gonna be affected. Because if you're gonna sell me something and I can't build what I want, the value is gonna go down. As simple as that. But if you sell me something that's on R6, and I can put 6,000 square feet, I can put a home or whatever it may be, there's some stipulations, then it's gonna go up. But if you got any stimulation on your land to where you sign this or agree to this, now you're telling me what I can't do. And as a people in America, you want to do what you want. So if you tell me I can't do something, it's no longer worth $400,000. I may give you $100,000 now. So be careful when you put these stimulations in the property itself for the long haul. Are you going to want to keep this forever? Are you going to have a legacy to leave it to? Or whatever the case may be. Your grandchildren, or whatever the case may be, they may not be able to do anything because you put stimulations on. So when you sign these things, or whatever the case may be, just think about the long haul, and am I going to move it forward in 4 years? But now I got to get rid of this stimulation I put on there. It's going to lawyer going to cost you pretty to take it off. So it's tricky with it. And I deal with some large tracts and trust, and whatever the case may be, but, there's a lawyer for everything. It's like a rule and that. And I hope that answers some of the questions. The trust part of my land is valuable as the same 75 acres as next door. Yes, without stimulations. No, with stimulations. But the water thing, yes, I'm going to go do the free part first. Because if they can handle 65 homes, then I'm going to submit the plan in 65 homes. But if we can't hold that, and I go do 65 homes and it costs me $10,000, and they tell me no at water, I'm going to be pretty upset. So, hope that answers the questions. So with that being said, does the church say amen, and I'm going to say good night. It's the council ladies meeting, so I'm leaving. I appreciate you all.
Thank you all for coming out. I appreciate it. I think I'll see you in a few weeks. I do still plan on having, you'll get the email.